Hello again, family. This is day 84 of our Reading Through the Bible Together in a Year series. Today we're in the book of 1 Samuel, we're covering chapters 25 through 27. Now, where we are in the story is that David has been on the run from Saul, and Saul was trying to kill him, but Saul goes into a cave to go bathroom, and David has a chance to kill him, but doesn't, cuts off a piece of his robe, and then when Saul leaves the cave, David shows up and says, "Hey man, I had the opportunity to kill you, but I didn't. I'm trying to prove to you I don't want you dead. I don't have anything against you. Like, let's be gentlemen here." And Saul's like, "Yeah, man, my problem. I've sinned. I'm doing the wrong thing. Come on, come home, and we'll be friends again." Which David doesn't go right away. But that's kind of where we're at. Right? Saul is still kind of threatened by David, but this one event of David has an opportunity to wipe out his enemy, and he chooses not to because he thinks of Saul as God's anointed, which he is. And so that's where we are, and let's keep going with that today. Shamuel died, and all Israel gathered themselves together and mourned for him, and buried him at his house in Ramah. Then David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. There was a man in Maon whose possessions were in Carmel, and the man was very great. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. This woman was intelligent and had a beautiful face, but the man was surly and evil in his doings. He was of the house of Caleb. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep. David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, "Go up to Carmel and go to Nabal and greet him in my name. Tell him, 'Long life to you, peace be to you. Peace be to your house, peace be to all that you have. Now I have heard that you have shearers. Your shepherds have now been with us, and we didn't harm them. Nothing was missing from them all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore let the young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a good day. Please give whatever comes to your hand to your servants and to your son David.' When David's young men came, they spoke to Nabal all those words in the name of David, and waited. Nabal answered David's servants and said, 'Who is David? Who is the son of Yishai? There are many servants who break away from their masters these days. Shall I then take my bread, my water, and my meat that I have killed from my shearers, and give it to men whom I don't know where they come from?' So David's young men turned on their way and went back, and came and told him all these words. David said to his men, 'Every man put on his sword.' Every man put on his sword. David also put on his sword. About 400 men followed David, and 200 stayed by the baggage. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, 'Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to greet our master, and he insulted them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not harmed, and we didn't miss anything as long as we went with them, when we were in the fields. They were a wall to us both by night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore know and consider what you will do, for evil is determined against our master and against all his house, for he is such a worthless fellow that one can't speak to him.' Then Abigail hurried and took 200 loaves of bread, 2 containers of wine, 5 sheep ready dressed, 5 seahs of parched grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on donkeys. She said to her young men, 'Go on before me. Behold, I am coming after you.' But she didn't tell her husband Nabal, as she rode on her donkey, and came down hidden by the mountain. Behold, David and his men came down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said, 'Surely in vain I have kept all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained to him. He has returned me evil for good. God do so to the enemies of David, and more also, if I leave of all that belongs to him by the morning light so much as one who urinates on a wall.' When Abigail saw David, she hurried and got off her donkey and fell before David on her face, and bowed herself to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, 'On me, my lord, on me be the blame. Please let your servant speak in your ears. Hear the words of your servant. Please don't let my lord pay attention to this worthless fellow, Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your servant, didn't see my lord's young men whom you sent. Now therefore, my lord, as Yahweh lives and as your soul lives, since Yahweh has withheld you from blood guiltiness and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now therefore let your enemies and those who seek evil to my lord be as Nabal. Now this present which your servant has brought to my lord, let it be given to the young men who follow my lord. Please forgive the trespass of your servant. For Yahweh will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord fights Yahweh's battles. Evil will not be found in all your days. Though men may rise up to pursue you and to seek your soul, yet the soul of my Lord will be bound in the bundle of life with Yahweh your God. He will sling out the souls of your enemies as from sling's pocket. It will come to pass, when Yahweh has done to my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you prince over Israel, that this shall be no grief to you, nor offense of heart to my Lord, either that you have shed blood without cause, or that my Lord has avenged himself. When Yahweh has dealt well with my Lord, then remember your servant. David said to Abigail, Blessed is Yahweh, the God of Israel, who sent you today to meet me. Blessed is your discretion, and blessed are you, who have kept me today from blood guiltiness, and from avenging myself with my own hand. For indeed, as Yahweh the God of Israel lives, who has withheld me from harming you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, surely there wouldn't have been left to Nabal by the morning light so much as one who urinates on a wall. So David received from her hand that which she had brought him. And he said to her, Go up in peace to your house. Behold, I have listened to your voice and have granted your request. Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house like the feast of a king. Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. Therefore she told him nothing until the morning light. In the morning, when the wine had gone out of Nabal, his wife told him these things, and his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. About 10 days later, Yahweh struck Nabal so that he died. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed is Yahweh, who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and has kept back his servant from evil. Yahweh has returned the evildoing of Nabal on his own head. David sent and spoke concerning Abigail to take her to himself as a wife. When David's servant had come to Abigail in Carmel, they spoke to her, saying, David has sent us to you to take you to him as a wife. She arose and bowed herself with her face to the earth and said, Behold, your servant is a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord. Abigail hurriedly arose and rode on a donkey with her 5 maids who followed her, and she went after the messengers of David and became his wife. David also took Ahinoam of Yezreel, and they both became his wives. Now Shaul had given Michal his daughter, David's wife, to Palti, the son of Laish, who was of Galim. The Ziphites came to Shaul to Gibeah, saying, Doesn't David hide himself in the hill of Hachilah, which is before the desert? Then Shaul arose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, having 3,000 chosen men of Israel with him, to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. Shaul encamped in the hill of Hachilah, which is before the desert, by the way. But David stayed in the wilderness, and he saw that Shaul came after him into the wilderness. David therefore sent out spies, and understood that Shaul had certainly come. Then David arose and came to the place where Shaul had encamped, and David saw the place where Shaul lay, with Avner the son of Ner, the captain of his army. Shaul lay within the place of the wagons, and the people were encamped around him. Then David answered and said to Ahimelech the Hittite, and to Abishai the son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab, saying, Who will go down with me to Shaul to the camp? Abishai said, I will go down with you. So David and Abishai came to the people by night. And, behold, Shaul lay sleeping within the place of the wagons, with his spear stuck in the ground at his head. And Avner and the people lay around him. Then Abishai said to David, God has delivered up your enemy into your hand today. Now therefore please let me strike him with the spear to the earth at one stroke, and I will not strike him the second time. David said to Abishai, Don't destroy him, for who can stretch out his hand against Yahweh's anointed and be guiltless? David said, As Yahweh lives, Yahweh will strike him, or his day shall come to die, or he shall go down into battle and perish. Yahweh forbid that I should stretch out my hand against Yahweh's anointed, but now please take the spear that is at his head and the jar of water, and let's go. So David took the spear and the jar of water from Shaul's head, and they went away. No man saw it or knew it, nor did any awake, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from Yahweh had fallen on them. Then David went over to the other side and stood on the top of the mountain far away, a great space being between them. And David cried to the people and to Abner the son of Ner, saying, Don't you answer, Abner? Then Abner answered, Who are you who calls to the king? David said to Abner, Aren't you a man? Who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not kept watch over your lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy your lord the king. This thing isn't good that you have done. As Yahweh lives, you are worthy to die, because you have not kept watch over your Lord, Yahweh's anointed. Now see where the king's spear is, and the jar of water that was at his head." Shaul recognized David's voice and said, "Is this your voice, my son David?" David said, "It is my voice, my lord, O king." He said, "Why does my lord pursue his servant? For what have I done? What evil is in my hand? Now therefore please let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If it is so that Yahweh has stirred you up against me, let him accept an offering. But if it is the children of men, they are cursed before Yahweh. For they have driven me out today, that I shouldn't cling to Yahweh's inheritance, saying, 'Go, serve other gods.' Now therefore don't let my blood fall to the earth away from the presence of Yahweh. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea, as when one hunts a partridge in the mountains." Then Shaul said, "I have sinned. Return my son David, for I will no more do you harm, because my life was precious in your eyes today. Behold, I have played the fool and have erred exceedingly." David answered, "Behold the spear, O king. Let one of the young men come over and get it. Yahweh will render to every man his righteousness and his faithfulness, because Yahweh delivered you into my hand today, and I wouldn't stretch out my hand against Yahweh's anointed. Behold, as your life was respected today in my eyes, so let my life be respected in Yahweh's eyes, and let him deliver me out of all oppression." Then Shaul said to David, "You are blessed, my son David. You will both do mightily and will surely prevail." So David went his way, and Shaul returned to his place. David said in his heart, "I will now perish one day by the hand of Shaul. There is nothing better for me than that I should escape into the land of the Philistines, and Shaul will despair of me, to seek me any more in all the borders of Israel. So I will escape out of his hand." David arose and passed over, he and the 600 men who were with him, to Achish the son of Maok, king of Gath. David lived with Achish at Gath, he and his men, every man with his household, even David with his 2 wives, Achinoam the Yezreelitess, and Abigail the Carmelitess, Nabal's wife. Shaul was told that David had fled to Gath, so he stopped looking for him. David said to Achish, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in one of the cities in the country, that I may dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you?" Then Achish gave him Ziklag that day. Therefore Ziklag belongs to the kings of Yehudah to this day. The number of the days that David lived in the country of the Philistines was a full year and 4 months. David and his men went up and raided the Geshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites, for those were the inhabitants of the land who were of old, on the way to Shur, even to the land of Egypt. David struck the land and saved no man or woman alive, and took away the sheep, the cattle, the donkeys, the camels, and the clothing. Then he returned and came to Achish. Achish said, "Against whom have you made a raid today?" David said, "Against the south of Yehudah, against the south of the Yerameelites, and against the south of the Kenites." David saved neither man or woman alive to bring them to Gath, saying, lest they should tell about us, saying, "David did this, and this has been his way all of the time that he has lived in the country of the Philistines." Achish believed David, saying, "He has made his people Israel utterly to abhor him. Therefore he will be my servant forever." So I really like this story about Abigail, right? I don't think I've read this before, but it really spoke to me in this reading that Abigail is described as a beautiful woman who's very intelligent. And she's married to this guy, Nabal, who's just like a worthless piece of junk, and he just is not kind to people, and he's a terrible human being, and he offends David greatly, and David's like marching up with 400 guys to wipe this guy out. And this beautiful and intelligent woman who totally could probably leave her husband, or I guess that wouldn't work out in that culture, but she could be happy that David's showing up to kill her husband, and she could try and use some feminine wiles to like get on David's good side. I don't know. There's lots of opportunities, but they present her as this beautiful, intelligent woman, and she goes and intercedes for her worthless husband and gives gifts to David and says, "David, don't kill this guy. Don't do this. Don't get blood on your hands today. You are Yahweh's king. You are from Yahweh. You fight Yahweh's battles. Like, this isn't what you should be doing." And David is like, "Wow, you're right. This isn't right. I shouldn't take my own vengeance. I should let God handle it." And then David leaves, and then 10 days later, Nabal gets struck down dead. And so when David finds out, he's like, "Give me that woman. She was wonderful. I love her. I'm all about it. She's a great wife." And it's cool to see her elevated in this story. It's a shame that David has his run-in with Bathsheba later, and that's just not good. But I don't think I ever really heard that much about Abigail, and I don't think I've read that story before. So it's really good. I enjoy it, and she, I guess, is a underrated character in the biblical storyline. But then this other thing. What we saw before the story of Abigail is we saw one instance where Saul went into the cave and David could have killed him but didn't. And now we have another story where Saul hears where David is and he goes after David with 3,000 guys. And they're all sleeping and like the whole army is surrounding Saul and he's in the middle of all the wagons and stuff right next to his head of security, Abner, right? And David and another guy, Abishai or something like that, they walk into the middle of the camp and they take the spear and the water jar right next to Saul's head. And David's guy is like, let me kill him. I could take him out real easy right here. Your problems would be solved. And David's like, you can't lift your hand against Yahweh's anointed and be guiltless. So they take the spear and the water jug and they take it out of the camp. And he calls out to Saul like, hey, man, look it. I got your spear and your water jug. I could have killed you. I'm telling you, Saul, I'm not against you. We're on the same team. We both want to serve Yahweh, or at least, David wants to serve Yahweh. And he doesn't want to kill Saul. And Saul, again, is like, I'm sorry. I've done bad. Come on home, David. So just some really good stories here, some good showings of good characters, people who really have some sort of faith and allegiance in Yahweh and want to do the right thing, and then others who don't. And we're just going to see that story continue to progress. But we're seeing a lot of the good side of David in these stories. We're going to get to some of the bad side of David later, but so far, so good. So I hope I've given you something to think about as you have a wonderful day.